You can draw this in Procreate. Let's make a watercolor painting in Procreate. I will take you through all the steps to paint this watercolor whale. Trust me, it'll be super easy. The canvas we're working on is 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels. I have left a link to the color palette in the description. So if you're ready, let's get started. Let's start off by sketching out our whale. I'd like to use the 6B pencil for that. You can find it under sketching, and you can just use black or a dark gray. Now the opacity is at 100% and the size is at, what is it? I can't see it, 30%. And then let's first create like a circle here for the head, or well, the head area. And then we'll have a curve like this going up. And here we'll curve like this. So this is like the shape of the body. So we have a rounded shape here, and then here we'll go up, and this is where the tail will be. This is not a realistic looking whale, by the way. The proportions are like exaggerated. Then we have a fin shape here, and another one over here if we have the space. So something like this. And then let's make a line over here that curves down a little bit and then up a little bit like this. It has a smile. And then the eye will be right on top. So we have this big belly, and then we'll have like a line going from the front to the back like this. And then here we'll have a flipper, a big flipper. Shaped a bit like this. And then we have another one over here. So this is the underside, the mouth, and then a big head. And this is roughly the shape. Let's give him a little pupil. I think this looks like a happy big whale. And now let's lower the opacity of our sketch. We can tap the N and slide to the left to, let's say, 30%. Or 31, whatever. Then let's tap the plus for a new layer, and then we can tap and hold it to drag it underneath our sketch. Now we are going to lay down a base color. Let's just pick this color, this blue color, fourth color in the first row. And for our brush, let's go to the inking brushes and use the studio pen. Now the opacity is at 100%. Let's set the size to 30. And then let's just roughly follow the shape. You don't have to follow like the edge exactly, because I want to create a more painterly edge later. So let's just roughly follow that shape. So we will still have some space for a painterly edge. And let's first just create the shape of the body. Then we'll put the flippers on separate layers. So let's drag in the color like this. And then for the painterly edge, let's go to my treasure chest brush pack. If you don't already have it, go and get it at freefromflow.com. It's totally free and it has loads of brushes. And we are going to use, where is it? It's hard to find these brushes when there are so many. We are going to use a watercolor brush. There it is, the round watery brush. We'll stick to this color. And for the size of the brush, let's go for 15%. The opacity is at 100, but still it's watercolor, so it's a little bit transparent. So we'll just go along the edge, and this time we'll make it more tidy. And don't worry about the color difference here. We are going to fix that later. This is all about creating a bit more of a textured edge. And we can actually make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 7%. So it's just about the watery edge, the watercolor texture edge. And don't worry about it being transparent right now. We're going to work on that later as well. You just need a nice looking edge. And you can rotate your canvas to make it easier to create a curve like this. Go along the belly. And you can also go to the painting section, the Procreate standard brushes, and then find the watercolor brush over here. And you can use that as well to add some extra texture. Let me check the size, it's way too big, maybe 10%. Adding some more texture. And you don't have to do it everywhere. Let's go for 4%. Opacity is at 100, by the way. You can just do it in some sections. Creating some extra texture. Just adds some variety. Now we need this whole shape to be opaque, and the way to do that is by duplicating this layer. We'll slide to the left, tap duplicate, then pinch these together and duplicate it again until we're sure. So we'll duplicate and pinch it together until we're sure that it's totally opaque. And then let's tap the layer and we'll set it to alpha lock. And then for our color, we'll grab this one, second color in the first row. We'll tap the layer again and use fill layer. Now we have a nice base for our watercolor. And let's just start with this body. We'll go for the flippers later. Let's lower the opacity of our sketch. Let's set it to 13%. And now let's make a new layer on top of this one. We'll tap the plus, and then we'll tap this new layer and set it to clipping mask so that whatever we paint here, it'll only show up on that shape that we have just created. And now let's go back to that treasure chest brush pack and use that round watery brush again. And now we are going to lay down those darker blues on here. So let's start with this one, third color in the first row. And let's make our brush nice and big, perhaps 60%. Opacity is at 100. And now we'll go over here and don't lift your pen. Every time you lift your pen, you will recharge your paint. And if you want a nice blended look, try to not lift it too often. So we're just going to add some blue. We can make it a bit smaller, 40%. You can play around with that, adding different blobs of blue on your whale. And I'd like the lower part to be light for now. So if you move your brush around on the screen, it'll mix the paint. Then let's go for a darker blue, this one, fourth color in the first row. And add some of those blobs as well. And on the tail. And also a little bit on the belly. Then let's use this color, third color in the second row. Let's use some of that on the belly. Along that flipper. And then we'll switch to this darkest blue, 5th color in the first row. It's nice and saturated. We can use some of that on the top area. Maybe a little bit over here. Then let's move back to that watercolor brush in the painting section. And let's use this light color, 1st color here in the 1st row. Let me check the size. I think that's good. Size is at 4%. And we can add some of these lines to the belly, following the curve of that belly. Going towards the mouth, and on this side, go up here. And I also want to use this color for that. 3rd color in the 2nd row, so we can also make some darker lines, adding some nice texture to that belly area. You can switch back and forth between these 2 colors, of course. You can also go back to that light color, maybe make the brush a little bit smaller, 2%, and add some more of these lines until you have a nice texture over here. Next, let's create the flippers. Let's start with the one in front. Let's make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus. And then let's just use this color, 4th color, and let's go back to our treasure chest brush pack for our round watery brush. Let's make the brush smaller, maybe 9%. Let's see. This is good. Let's create the shape. And create that nice painterly edge. And don't worry about the blotchiness here. Let's make the brush even smaller, 2%, so we can create a nice detailed fin. And then once you have that shape, you can just go ahead and duplicate this. Pinch it together, duplicate it again until you have a fully opaque fin like this. And then we'll just use the same trick as we did before. So first we'll tap the layer and use alpha lock. Then we'll use this color, 2nd color in the 1st row, tap the layer again and use fill layer. Now we can make a layer on top. We'll tap the plus, set that layer to clipping mask. Then go back to the brush, our round watery brush, and then use this color first, 3rd color in the 1st row. Make our brush bigger, perhaps 40%, and go ahead and color this and create layers of blue here. I hope you're having fun so far painting your own watercolor whale. Now, if you want to take your drawing and painting skills in Procreate really to that next level, if you want to have more fun, follow even more tutorials, I have more than 200 over at Patreon. And there are so many styles, so many subjects that I'm sure that you'll always find something fun and inspiring. So it would be great if you come and check that out. I will leave a link for you down in the description. But now let's continue. We'll go darker with this one, 4th color in the 1st row. And then finally also with this color, 5th color in the 1st row. A little bit over here. And then we'll tap this layer of the fin and add a layer mask. And then with black, we can start painting here and blend it more with the body. So something like this. Now for the other fin, we need a layer underneath the others. So first tap here and tap the plus, tap and hold the layer and move it to the bottom. And now we'll repeat the step. We'll use the round watery brush again. Well, we can stick with this color. Make the brush smaller, like 5%. And create the fin shape. And then again, we can duplicate this layer, pinch it together, and then duplicate it again until it's really opaque. Then we can tap the layer, turn on alpha lock, pick that light color, second color in the first row, tap the layer again and use fill layer. And then again, we can tap the plus for a new layer on top, set that layer to clipping mask. And then here, paint again with the round watery brush in our darker blues, like the third color. Set the size of the brush to around 30. And let's add some watercolor here. Maybe a little bit darker as well with the fourth color, like this. Then for the eye of the whale, we'll go to this layer. And we'll add a layer mask here as well. We'll tap the layer, tap mask. And then for our brush, let's go to that, what was it? That painting brush, watercolor brush, have our color set to black. And now we can go in here and create that circle. Just create an opening here. So that we get the white of the eye. Just something like this. Now on this layer mask, we can also add some more effects, like the effect of adding salt to your watercolor painting. Let's go to our treasure chest brush pack. Let me find the perfect brush. Maybe the spackle brush. We can use it with our black color, and then we can just go over some areas. Let's make the brush bigger, 80%. Just go over there, add some spackles. This is what happens when you add salt to a watercolor painting that is still wet. Adding salt will absorb the paint and it will leave light specks. And you can do the same thing with a brush that's already in Procreate. If you go to the spray paints, you can use the Flicks brush and also use that for some spatters. 17% is the size for me, but you can play around with that. And just add some of those splatters for a nice painterly effect. And for an extra painterly effect, let's go to the top of our layers over here and let's add a photo texture. You can do that by going to the wrench, and then to add, then to insert a photo, and then you can find a texture that you like. I would suggest some watercolor paper. I will add a link to the description so you can use the same texture as I'm using. And then make sure that your texture covers the entire illustration like this. And then you can go to the layer menu here and change the layer blending mode. You can tap the N and then let's set this to color burn. And you can play around with the opacity, make it less obvious. Well, let's go for something like 72%. And then let's add more detail to our whale. Let's go here to this layer. Now let's tap the plus for a new layer on top. And on this layer, I'd like to work with a different brush. And that's under inking, the Inka brush. Where is it? Over here. And for our color, let's use this one. Fourth color in the second row. Opacity of this brush is at 100%. Let's set the size to maybe around 14. And let's go in here and give our whale a pupil. Let's make the brush a little bit small. Let's set it to 3% for now, just to get control here. Keep a slight edge around. And now we can switch to this color, first color in the first row for a little highlight. You can also add a little light edge here, adding some extra texture. Then let's switch back to the fourth color in the second row and make our brush a bit bigger again, 13%. And then let's create the mouth. Let's create a line like this. Look at him smile. A little curve here. I think that's really nice. Then let's switch to this color, second color in the first row. I'd like to use that for a little bit of a light edge on top. Following the curve, maybe a little bit here. And now we can use this brush for even more details, like maybe some dark touches with this color. That's the fifth color in the second row. You can add some texture and shadow over here, just with some short dabs. Adding this shadow area. And then let's switch to this dark blue, fifth color in the first row, and add some of that as well. Maybe some here. And also here along this edge. And let's add some on this tail. Following that curve. This is just adding extra expressiveness. This is where you can add your own extra touches. And I also want to add some in a different color. Let's add some with this second color in the second row. And by the way, let's also turn off our sketch layer here at the top. We don't need that anymore. I want some like golden touches. So we can add some of this texture, some of these like hatches, as if we have used a gold pen. And I also want to add some of this on the fins. So let's first go to this fin. Let's tap the plus for a new layer on top, and then add some of that, a fifth color in the second row. So we have some shadow here. Let's add some of these dabs. And then for the top fin, we can just make a layer here at the top. And then let's first add some light color, second color in the first row. We can highlight the fin a little bit here. And then let's add some of those golden touches with the second color in the second row. And let's go along the front of our fin. Then for the final touch, let's also go to the luminance brushes and use the light pen and set that to the first color over here in the second row. The opacity of this brush is at 100%. Let's set the size to 20. And now we can go in here and add some brighter touches to these hatches. Not everywhere, just a slight touch also here. Really gives that golden effect. And we can also add some sparkles. Maybe we have added some golden glitter to our watercolor painting. You can also add a few here. Maybe on the tail. And then finally, for a final watercolor touch, let's add some splatters to the background. Let's go to the bottom here and tap the plus, tap and hold this layer to drag it to the bottom. Then we can go to the spray paints again to grab the flex brush and then just use a blue like this one, fourth color in the first row. And then let's just add some flicks in some random areas like this. And then to make it more subtle, what you can do is add a layer mask. So tap the layer, add a mask, and then with this flex brush, you can go over and remove some of those, make them more subtle. Also add some more variety in them. And then you can call your cute whale finished. I hope you had fun. Don't forget to share your work, and I'll see you next time.